My name is Mike. I'm 36 years old. For the better part of the last decade, I've been a remote software developer, spending most of my days behind a screen, building tools and systems for people I'll never meet. It's not glamorous work. It's not loud or thrilling or particularly rewarding, but it paid the bills, and more importantly, it let me stay close to home. Home. That's a strange word now, because home used to mean Lisa. Lisa was everything. Still is, in some strange way, even now, just in a much darker, hollow sense. She was the center of my life for over 10 years, the person I built routines around, the reason I cooked dinner at 6:30, folded laundry on Sundays, paid the electricity bill early, and drank my coffee black, because that's how she liked it. Or maybe more truthfully, because I wanted to be the kind of man she liked. We met 12 years ago at a conference in San Francisco. She was giving a talk on legal frameworks for startups, and I was there with a friend who practically dragged me out of my hotel room. I hadn't wanted to go. I'd just gotten out of a messy breakup and was trying to disappear into work. Lisa was magnetic. Not in the way people usually describe beauty, not all curves and makeup and flirtation. She was composed, controlled, confident, the kind of woman who wore navy blue blazers and didn't fidget when she spoke. Her hair was tied back in a simple knot, and she carried herself like she knew something the rest of us didn't. I fell hard, fast. After her talk, I lingered by the refreshment table until I accidentally bumped into her. I made some awkward joke about the coffee being too weak, and to my surprise, she laughed. We ended up talking for over an hour. About law, about code, about obscure science fiction novels we both inexplicably loved. 3 months later, we were dating. A year after that, we moved in together. 2 years after we met, we got married. Small ceremony, backyard reception. I remember she wore this off-white dress with lace around the wrists and no jewelry, except for a thin silver bracelet I'd bought her that morning. She looked timeless. Everyone said we were perfect together. And for a long time, I believed it. Lisa was a rising star at her firm, a corporate law powerhouse by day, and somehow still full of energy when she came home. She traveled often, especially in the later years, as she began leading negotiations for bigger clients. I was proud of her. I still remember telling my parents over dinner one night, "She's going to be a partner before she hits 40. She didn't hit 40. Not yet. She hit something else instead. A metal guardrail at 65 miles per hour. But that part comes later. Before the crash, before the hospital, before the second phone, there were signs. Little ones, things that, looking back, I should have noticed. Moments that don't seem like much until you connect the dots. And suddenly, they sketch out a picture that's been hiding in plain sight, like how Lisa stopped asking me to pick her up from the airport. At first it was practical. "The Uber's faster," she said. "You don't need to wait around." Then it became habitual. Then, secretive. She wouldn't tell me when her flight landed. Sometimes I'd only find out she was back when I heard the front door open at 2 a.m. or how she started locking her phone. Lisa used to leave her phone anywhere: kitchen counter, coffee table, bathroom sink. We were one of those couples who shared everything. Not because we had to, but because we didn't have anything to hide. But sometime around year 6 of our marriage, that changed. She added a passcode, started keeping it face down, took it with her into the shower. I noticed. Of course I noticed, but I told myself not to overthink it. Lisa was under a lot of pressure at work. Confidentiality matters. Boundaries. That's what I told myself. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, the paranoid guy, the cliché, because the truth is, I trusted her. Absolutely. Lisa had this way of looking at you, direct and unwavering, that made you feel like she saw through all your bullshit. Like she knew who you really were and loved you anyway. It was impossible to lie to her. So I assumed it was impossible for her to lie to me. I assumed a lot of things. I assumed that when she kissed me goodbye before catching a flight, it meant she'd miss me. I assumed that when she said she was working late, she was at the office, drafting contracts. I assumed that our silence some nights, the way she'd scroll through her phone without speaking, was just exhaustion, not distance. You can live like that for years. In a story you wrote for yourself, a life that feels safe because you've built it that way. And then one morning, with a phone call and a few cold words from a stranger, it all comes undone. It was a Friday morning, November 3rd. I remember because I had a Zoom meeting scheduled at 10:30 a.m. with a startup client in Berlin, and I was running late. I'd just put on a collared shirt over my pajama pants, trying to look halfway presentable from the chest up, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally, I don't pick up those calls. Like most people, I assume they're spam or a robocall offering me a new credit card. But something in my gut told me to answer. There was a weird stillness in the room, the kind that makes your skin tighten just slightly. I swiped to accept. "Is this Mr. Mike Turner?" The voice was deep, flat, and professional. No emotion, no greeting. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Memorial Hospital. Your wife, Lisa Turner, has been admitted following a motor vehicle accident. She's currently in critical condition." I couldn't speak. Not at first. It was like the voice traveled from the speaker and slammed directly into my chest. What do you mean critical?" I stammered. Is she okay? What happened?" The woman on the line paused for a second. I imagined her glancing at a clipboard, maybe trying to soften the edges of what she had to say. But her voice stayed steady. Her vehicle collided with a highway barrier on Route 12. She sustained multiple injuries. Paramedics had to extract her from the car. She's in the intensive care unit, currently unconscious. I asked if I could see her. She said yes. No hesitation. She gave me the hospital address and told me to come immediately. I don't remember grabbing my keys. I don't remember putting on shoes. I just remember running. Down the stairs, into the car, onto the highway. I drove like I was outside my own body, like I was watching someone else's hands grip the wheel, while my mind replayed 1,000 memories on loop. Her laugh. The way she brushed her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The time she fell asleep with a book on her chest, and I didn't move for an hour because I didn't want to wake her. What if that was it? What if the last thing I ever said to her was, "Have a good trip"? What if I never got the chance to say I was sorry for all the stupid little fights, for not being more present, for not noticing whatever she was carrying alone? By the time I reached the hospital, I was shaking. The ER smelled like bleach and cold metal. I remember the artificial lights overhead, how they flickered slightly, like they hadn't been changed in years. The front desk nurse asked me to wait. That was the worst part, the waiting. But finally, someone led me through a long hallway. White walls, heavy doors, beeping machines behind curtains. I felt like I was walking into a tunnel, one that might not have an exit. And then I saw her, Lisa. She lay motionless in a narrow ICU bed, tubes in her arms, gauze wrapped around her her face was pale, bruised on one side. A small cut above her right eyebrow had already started to scab. I didn't recognize her at first, not because her face had changed, but because I'd never seen her so still. Lisa was always in motion. Even when she slept, her breathing had a rhythm, a presence. Now she was a whisper of herself. The nurse said she had a concussion, several broken ribs, a fractured arm, and internal bruising. Her vitals were stable but weak. She hadn't regained consciousness since the paramedics pulled her from the wreck. "We don't know when she'll wake up," the nurse said gently. "But she's a fighter." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. fighter. Yes, that sounded like her. I sat beside her for hours, holding her hand, talking to her softly, like maybe somewhere in that damaged body, she could hear me. I'm here, Liz. It's okay. You're safe now. At some point, I realized I hadn't eaten. I went to the hospital cafeteria, grabbed a sandwich I didn't eat, and came back. She hadn't moved. Beside her bed was her purse, the same black leather tote she always carried for work. I reached in to get her phone, thinking I should text her boss, maybe cancel meetings for the week. That's when I saw it. A second phone, not. The sleek iPhone I gave her for her birthday last March. This one was old. A slightly beat-up Samsung with a hairline crack in the corner. Faint scuff marks on the back. A device clearly meant to be unnoticed. I stared at it for a long time. Something in my chest tightened. The same way it does when you're walking. Down familiar stairs in the dark and suddenly miss a step. The phone lit up when I pressed the button. No fingerprint lock, no passcode, just open. The screen flickered to life, revealing a thread of messages. The contact name was saved simply as J, and the most recent message, just 2 hours before the crash, read, "Same room as last time. Don't make me wait." The message sat there like a trap, still glowing on the screen. Same room as last time. Don't make me wait. My brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe it was an inside joke. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't. I tapped the screen again, and the full message thread opened. And suddenly, I was no longer standing in a hospital room. I was falling into a reality that didn't look anything like the life I thought I was. Living, there were hundreds of messages, late-night conversations, morning greetings, check-ins during flights, updates from hotels. And they weren't just casual exchanges. They were intimate, detailed, raw. God, last night was insane. I can still smell you on me. You make me forget I ever had a husband. Mike suspects nothing. He's so easy to fool. 2 more months. Then I'll ask for a separation. I've got the documents ready. I felt sick. My mouth went dry. My heart started pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I wasn't breathing, just reading, scrolling, watching a life I thought I knew disintegrate word by word. Photos. I opened the gallery. There she was, Lisa, my wife, in bed with another man, smiling, laughing, posing, hotel rooms, mirrors, selfies taken under dim, expensive lighting. The same way she used to smile with me, now with someone else. In places I'd never been. On nights I thought she was out working. There were videos, too. I didn't watch them. I couldn't. Seeing the thumbnails was enough. The intimacy, the familiarity, the confidence. It wasn't an affair. It was a second life. And she was good at hiding it. So good that I, the man who lived beside her for 10 years, never once suspected she was sleeping with someone else. I sat down slowly, phone still in hand, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I felt like I was drowning in quiet. The kind of silence that stretches out forever. No thoughts, no words, just pressure. Heavy, crushing. I checked the contact info. The number was saved as J, no last name. But I recognized the area code. It was local. And then, 1. Photo told me everything I needed to know. It was taken at a cocktail party. Lisa wearing a deep burgundy dress I remembered buying for her. Next to her, holding her waist with both hands, smiling for the camera. Jason, her colleague, her gay best friend. The one who hugged me every time he visited, who joked about never dating women, who once brought wine to our house and told me how lucky I was to have Lisa, that Jason. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because I had nothing else left in me. The kind of laugh that comes out when you've been hit so hard, you don't know whether you're standing or falling. She chose him. Not once. Not in a moment of weakness. But again, and again, and again. Over the course of 4 years, then I saw the voice memo. It was saved under a folder called Plans. I don't know why I listened. Some part of me needed to hear her voice, to convince myself this wasn't some sick joke. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. Lisa's voice came through, hushed and calm. Okay, so step 1. We finish out the quarter. I'll tell Mike. I'm traveling for work. Easy. He won't ask. He never asks. Step 2. I start pulling records. I've already taken screenshots of our joint account, the retirement fund, and the home equity. I'll show them to the attorney as proof of my contributions. Step 3. We wait for Jason's LLC to finalize, so the funds can be redirected without suspicion. That gives us a clean landing spot. Step 4. Separation. It'll be painful for him, sure, but he's passive. He won't fight back. He's not that guy. My hands went cold. Not only had she cheated, she had strategized it. She had mapped it out like a business deal, a hostile takeover of our marriage. She knew I wouldn't suspect her. She counted on it. My faith in her, the quiet kind of trust built over a decade, was her greatest weapon. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that plastic chair beside her hospital bed, the phone in my lap, my head spinning. Lisa looked peaceful. Weak, but peaceful. I watched the way her chest rose and fell, the slow rhythm of a body trying to heal. The same body that had spent nights wrapped around another man, while I cooked dinner and waited for her texts. I looked at her hand. The one with the wedding ring. I'd put that ring there. I remembered kneeling in front of her on the dock at Echo Lake. She'd cried, said yes, hugged me so tightly I thought I'd never want anything else in life. That was 10 years ago. Now, I was a stranger sitting beside a stranger in a life I no longer recognized. Lisa woke up on a Wednesday morning. I wasn't expecting it. I had just stepped into the room after grabbing coffee from the vending machine in the hallway, a bitter, burnt-tasting excuse for caffeine. I'd spent the last 4 nights sleeping. In the small hospital lounge down the hall, a couch just wide enough for one shoulder to hang off. When I walked in, she was blinking, groggy, disoriented. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was trying to say something but couldn't quite remember how. Our eyes met. For a second, time stopped, not in a poetic, magical way. More like a head-on collision between memory and reality. "Mike," she croaked. Her voice was dry, raspy, barely more than a whisper. But it hit me like a train, because no matter what I had read, what I had seen on that secret phone, what I had felt spiraling through my chest for days now, hearing her say my name still meant something. And I hated that. "You're awake," I said softly. She nodded, wincing at the movement. Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment, then opened again. "What happened?" "You were in a car accident," I said. "You've been unconscious for 6 days," she blinked, absorbing that. 6 days? Yeah. I pulled the chair closer to her bed. "But you're going to be okay. You're stable now. They've been monitoring you around the clock." Didn't answer right away. Her fingers moved slowly, reaching for mine. I let her touch me. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted to. But because in that moment, the human instinct to hold someone suffering outweighed the hurricane in my chest. The doctors came in minutes later. They asked her the usual questions. "What's your name? What year is it? What's the last thing you remember?" Lisa struggled, but responded accurately. They were cautiously optimistic. She was responsive, lucid, strong, just like always. When they left, we were alone again. The machines hummed in the background. I sat there watching her. She was looking at me too, but not the way she used to. There was a flicker of confusion behind her gaze. Worry even. She sensed something. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. It felt foreign on my face. "You're the one in the hospital, Lise." "I know," she said. You look different." "Tired." I didn't respond. What could I say? "You're right, I haven't slept. Because while you were in a coma, I found out that the woman I married was planning to rob me blind and run away with her secret lover." No, I couldn't say that. Not yet. Over the next few days, Lisa improved rapidly. The doctors called it remarkable, but I wasn't surprised. Lisa had always been good at recovering from stress, from setbacks, from anything life threw at her. She was strong. I watched her charm the nurses, crack quiet jokes, ask for updates on work emails. And all the while, I kept pretending. I pretended to be supportive. I brought her favorite tea. I read to her from the books she liked. I even helped her shower, holding her elbow while she stepped into the warm spray, careful not to let water touch the wound on her arm. And at night, when I went back to the lounge, I listened to that voice memo again. Her words. That calm, methodical tone, like this was all just logistics. Then came the night she asked me, "Mike, why haven't you asked me what I was doing before the crash?" I paused, glancing up from the hospital tray I'd been pushing away. "I figured you'd tell me when. You're ready. You're not angry?" She was fishing, not for truth, but for how much I knew. I shrugged. "You're alive. That's all that matters." That was a lie, but a useful one. She reached for my hand again. This time I didn't take it. She hesitated. Her eyes searched mine, slowly, carefully, looking for something. Guilt, forgiveness, or maybe a crack, a slip, a signal that I'd found the phone. But I gave her nothing. Not yet. That night, back in the hospital lounge, I opened my notebook. I'd been writing things down every day since the accident. Dates, observations, inconsistencies, like how her car was found going the opposite direction of the law office she told me she'd be at. Like how Jason's social media had gone silent since the accident. No gym selfies, no group brunch photos. Almost like he was waiting, watching, like how Lisa still hadn't asked about the second phone. If it was truly lost or stolen or destroyed in the crash, wouldn't she be frantic? Wouldn't she mention it? No. She wasn't asking. Because she knew. She knew I had it. She was just waiting for me to say it out loud. The day Lisa was discharged from the hospital, it rained. Not the dramatic, stormy kind of rain that movies use to punctuate emotional endings. Just a slow, steady drizzle that made the streets look like they'd been washed too many times. Pulled up to the curb in our car, her car technically since I rarely drove it, and helped her into the passenger seat. She moved slowly, still stiff, still wrapped in layers of gauze and soft hospital-issue fabric, but her strength was coming back. Her mask, too. "I can't believe I'm going home," she said softly, looking out the window. "It feels like I was in that hospital forever." 12 days, I replied. "It just felt longer." She smiled at that. But I didn't return it. The house was exactly as we left it. Too neat. Too quiet. I carried her bag upstairs and left her to rest in the bedroom. Then I went down to the kitchen, poured myself a whiskey, the kind I kept for rare nights, and sat in silence. That evening, I heated soup. She ate a little. We barely spoke. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was tactical, like two people sitting on either side of a chessboard, waiting to see who would move first. She went to bed early. I stayed downstairs, staring at the phone. Her phone. The second one. It sat on the table like a ghost. Everything was still there. Messages, photos, transfers, voice memos, her voice. Her plans, her betrayal. I had every reason to confront her, to scream, to break things, to demand answers. but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed her to feel safe again. I needed her to believe she was in control. Because only then, would the confrontation mean anything. 3 more days passed. She recovered quickly, too quickly. The woman who once cried in the dark, clinging to me like a lifeline, now moved about the house like nothing had happened. She smiled. She joked. She made coffee. She didn't ask about the phone. She didn't mention Jason. She was trying to erase the wreckage, not just from the crash, but from everything she had been building behind my back. On the 4th night, I made my move. I waited until after dinner. She was on the couch, legs curled beneath her, watching some legal drama on Netflix, the kind she always called fictionalized trash. Her face was relaxed, comfortable. That's when I stood, walked into the study, and returned with the old Samsung. I didn't say a word, just placed it gently on the coffee table in front of her. Lisa stared at it like it was radioactive. Then she looked up at me. For a second, her face went blank. All expression dropped away. Then came the performance. "What's that?" she asked, too casually. "You know what it is." She didn't answer. I sat across from her, watching. "Found it in your bag. Same day as the accident. Thought you might want to explain." She reached out slowly, fingers brushing the screen. She didn't pick it up. "That's not mine," she said softly. I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Because it has hundreds of pictures of you, texts, videos, voice memos, and a very detailed step-by-step plan on how you were going to rob me blind and run off with Jason." The "so" name landed like a slap. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Mike, save it." My voice came out sharper than I intended. I leaned forward. I listened to everything. I saw it all. Every lie, every message, every damn hotel room. Lisa didn't move. Her body had gone still, the way a deer does when it senses it's being hunted. "You were going to leave me. Not just leave, destroy me. Take what we built, empty our accounts, and you weren't even going to say goodbye." She opened her mouth again, and this time words came out. It wasn't supposed to go that far. 4 years, Lisa. 4. You don't accidentally fuck someone for 4 years. Her eyes welled up, but I saw it. I saw her searching, not for forgiveness, but for leverage. "It started as something small," she whispered. "I was lonely. You were always working. Jason made me feel—" "Don't," I said coldly. "Don't. You dare blame this on me." Silence. She wiped her eyes. But the tears weren't falling. Not yet. "I wasn't going to go through with it," she said. "I swear, I changed my mind." "That's convenient," I said. "Right around the time your plan got derailed by a metal guardrail, that hit hard. I don't even talk to Jason anymore." "I know, because he stopped answering after the crash. He left you." That broke her composure. Tears finally came, messy, uncontrolled. But I didn't comfort her. I let her cry, because she wasn't crying for me. She was crying for herself, for the plan that didn't work, for the life she thought she could run to, now gone. When she finally looked up again, her voice was barely audible. "What now?" It wasn't a challenge. It was fear. I took a breath. Held it. "I don't know." And that was the truth. I didn't know if I wanted revenge. I didn't know if I wanted to scream. I didn't even know if I still loved her. All I knew was that I could never look at her the same way again. I didn't sleep that night. Lisa did. Eventually. Curled up on her side of the bed, like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet tick of the clock on the nightstand. Every second. Felt louder than it should, like time was pushing me, demanding an answer I still didn't have. What now? That question haunted me. I had spent 12 years loving her, 10 of them married, thousands of shared meals, hundreds of conversations whispered in the dark, road trips, lazy Sundays, inside jokes no one else understood. Was all of that gone? Was it ever real, or was I just convenient? The man who stayed home, cooked dinner, paid the bills, gave her cover while she built an escape plan with someone else. My mind kept circling back to one detail, something small, something that wouldn't let go. That voice memo. He won't fight. He's not that guy. That line echoed through my skull like a curse. She knew I wouldn't retaliate. She bet on it. Counted on it. And she was right. Because even now, even after all of it, I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to ruin her. I didn't want to make her hurt the way she made me hurt. I just wanted out. The next morning, I made breakfast. She came downstairs slowly in one of my old sweatshirts, the one she used to steal when she wanted to feel wrapped in me. The irony burned. "You didn't sleep," she said. I shook my head. She sat at the table across from me, silent, waiting. I placed an envelope in front of her. Inside were the divorce papers, prepared, signed, filed. Her eyes widened. "Mike." "You asked what now?" I said. "This." She opened the envelope with shaking fingers. I watched her eyes scan the first page. "You already filed. Last week. You knew you were going to do this." "I didn't," I admitted. "But I knew I had to be ready." She looked up at me, not with anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. "So that's it?" "Lisa," I said softly, "you didn't just break a promise. You broke the whole foundation. You planned a future without me while I was planning a life with you." "I made a mistake." "No, you made a choice. Over and over again." She flinched at that. "You said I wouldn't fight," I added. "That I wasn't that guy." "I didn't mean it." "But you were right," I said. "I'm not that guy. I'm not going to scream or smash things or drag this through court." I leaned forward. "I'm just walking away." She didn't try to stop me. Not really. She signed the papers a few days later. No custody battle. We didn't have kids. No asset dispute. I'd already protected myself legally. It was clean, cold, clinical, just like her plan. She moved, out 2 weeks after that. And just like that, the woman I built a life with became a memory, and not a good one. It's been almost a year now. I moved to another city. Got a small apartment near the coast. I still work remotely, but I take more walks now. I go to therapy once a week. I'm learning to enjoy silence again. Sometimes I still hear her voice in my head. Not the real Lisa, but the version I thought she was. The woman I believed in. That's the hardest part. Letting go of a version of someone who never really existed. Sometimes people ask me if I'd ever forgive her. I say this. Forgiveness is a gift you give to someone who's sorry for who they became. Lisa wasn't sorry for who she became. She was sorry she got caught. If you've ever trusted someone with everything, your love, your time, your future, and they betrayed you in the most calculated way, you are not weak for walking away. You are not naive for having believed, and you are not broken. You're just waking up, just like I did.